Hello, I'm Askar Shariliyev and you're watching news from Kazakhstan. Another trial took place immediately following the one over former Zhanaozen mayor in Kızılar'da, this time over Mangistau region ex-deputy governor Amangildi Aytkulov. The former high-ranking official is accused of abuse of office and bribery of especially large amount. The trial is being conducted without the jury at the decision of the judge. Amangildi Aytkulov shared the defendant's bench with Izbalsyn Kalbayev. According to the investigation, he served as the mediator in the transfer of the bribe.
Amangildi Aytkulov was in charge of development project and construction in Zhanaozen. The prosecutor's office believes that Ozen Kuruluş construction company paid him back with a Kerouan restaurant for his protection services. The contract stipulates that the restaurant belongs to Aytkulov's daughter. According to case materials back in 2010, the owner of the construction company promised the official to build him a private house at his own expense in exchange for the government order to construct a 200-apartment building in Zhanaozen. Since the proceedings were open for public and following the ban on the use of video and photo equipment, reporters with cameras were only allowed to be present during the first half of the hearing. Because of Aytkulov's protection, Sadikov helped to get construction orders for KNPK company. He understood that should he decline to give a bribe, he might face problems, and he had to agree with the illegal demands.
The Mangistau Regional Appeals Board upheld the Aktau Municipal Court's verdict over the oil worker accused of participating in mass riots in Zhanaozen. Naren Jarılgasınov was the only oil worker who made the appeal. The rest are expecting the conclusion of the trial over opposition leaders. In addition, their 6-month appeals period has not yet expired.
Naren Jarılgasınov was one of 37 oil workers accused of taking part in Zhanaozen mass riots on December 16, 2011 in Aktau. He was later tried and sentenced to 6 years in prison. The verdict was announced at the beginning of summer, and an appeal was submitted 10 weeks later. On Wednesday, the panel of 3 judges, Amirov, Turjanov and Munbayeva, gathered together 24 people from Zhanaozen to hold a 15-minute trial. The presiding judge Amirov asked Zhanaozen residents whether they had any claims regarding the reviewed appeal. Aktoya Shagbayeva was the only one to respond. The woman cannot get compensation for her destroyed yurt, which was set up at the square on the tragic day at the insistence of the local DIA. The rest of the people only requested not to be forced to return to courts. Judge Amirov agreed and allowed everyone to leave the courtroom. The prosecutor then proceeded with a speech, outlined the several key episodes allegedly proven during the investigation. According to security officials, Naren Jarılgasınov is an alcoholic. He was walking around the square during the riots, threatening to blow up a bus with a stick in his hand. This was the primary reason why the prosecutor asked the appeals board not to change the initial ruling. The judges later retreated to the jury room and 10 minutes later announced the first decision on the cassation appeal. Upon the review of the criminal case against Naren Jarılgasınov, the cassation board ruled that the court made the right decision, and therefore we believe it's appropriate to leave the sentence of the Aktau court and the ruling of the appellate board of the Mangistau court in effect. Of course, we have not exhausted all of our resources yet. Now we need to prove the instances of torture and illegal methods of investigation. I believe we need to work our way in this direction. Attorney Gulnara Zhuaspayeva hopes she will be able to prove to Aktau court the use of illegal methods of investigation applied to her clients. Roza Tulitaeva, who was convicted to 5 years on charges of organizing mass riots in Zhanaozen, openly spoke about it during the trial. And there are also medical examination reports of Maksat Dosmakambetov. However, it seems that Zhanaozen residents have lost any hope for finding justice. Seysen Aspintayev, one of the oil workers who received a suspended sentence, is convinced that it is useless to look for the truth when verdicts are passed in secret. We all knew the outcome. We lost the last hope that there exists some sort of justice.
The Zhanaozen Act was discussed on Tuesday by European deputies in Warsaw. It was handed to them by civil activists from Kazakhstan as an attachment to the open letter requesting the initiative aimed at bringing to justice the authorities responsible for what took place on December 16, 2011. The document was based on the Magnitsky Act, which included 60 people who were supposedly involved in the murder of the Hermitage Capital Fund lawyer. To recap, Sergei Magnitsky attempted to foil a criminal scheme which funneled tens of millions of rubles from the Russian Federation's budget.
The Kazakh activist's open letter is addressed to presidents of the European Parliament and the European Commission, special representative of the European Union to Central Asia, and also the EU Human Rights Ombudsman, reports Golos Respublik. The letter was signed by the editor-in-chief of the newspaper Vzglyad, Igor Vinyavsky, and chief editor of Respublika Group, Irina Petrushova. The initiative group has started to compile a Zhanaozen list, but hope that other representatives of civil society will help them with more names. At the moment, the document already includes over 30 people. Our attempts to stop the tyranny and political repressions are fruitless, since the state apparatus, including the prosecutor's office and courts, are under Nazarbayev's control and are acting on his orders. He does not allow international investigations, as he understands what kind of results it will bring. Under such conditions, we appeal to the European Union for help. We are confident that if the European Union, following the example of Magnitsky Act, will create a Zhanaozen Act, Nazarbayev will not dare to continue his repressions.
Kazakhmys Corporation Union leaders Ayjan Makhatova and Saule Seydakhmetova spoke out about clashes within the company. They were able to seek out a pay raise along with other social benefits. However, issues arose with transportation companies' management that were outsourced. The next report has more.
In August, Ayjan Makhatova was elected as head of the shop union at Zhezkazgan Central Heating Plant, but her victory did not last long. Now the company's administration and the head of Kazakhmys Trade Union claim that Makhatova's position is illegitimate. The woman is not allowed to enter the premises of the plant during the working hours to deal with the union issues. The head of my shop was called to the director's office. Yershov and Filipovich were there in the room, and they came down on him with questions such as why I was elected, and who gave him the right to elect me as chair of the turbine shop trade union. They told him that I am not a reliable person, and I could cause trouble anytime. Makhatova is convinced that the plant senior management cannot forgive her for managing to secure a wage rise for the workers. In the meantime, the corporation claims it is not informed about the dispute. Kazakhmys does not interfere with the work of labor unions and thus cannot force anyone to exit any organizations. The decision concerning the involvement in unions is taken by each worker personally upon their own discretion. Zhezkazgan activist Nelia Chuykina says she helped Makhatova with the resolution of labor disputes. She believes that a dangerous situation has already developed in the corporation. Since 2007, Kazakhmys has been outsourcing some of the work of its subsidiary enterprises. The staff of the transportation companies, Adanzo Logistics and Promtrans Management, are dissatisfied with their labor conditions and wages and came with their demands directly to Kazakhmys, but not owners and directors of their companies. The same situation is happening with catering services, which will be likely outsourced to a Moscow-based company, says Chuykina. First of all, the corporation is a very closed organization and will not reveal financial numbers. Despite our numerous attempts with official letters, we failed to receive reports on revenue. I personally wrote a letter inquiring about profits and deductions, but I always got very polite answers stating that since the corporation is a private company, it cannot disclose such information. Also on Wednesday, website Guljan.org published a story about Kazakhmys former board chairman Vladimir Kim, who was allegedly extracting money from the country through the companies of business partners. Only Kazakhmys decision-makers can set up something like that. Namely, it can only be one person, Vladimir Kim, a formal shareholder, but in fact the real top manager of the company, who makes all the decisions regarding supplies, as well as financial and other resources flow during the industrial processes. As a result, unknown to anyone, or even worse, foreign offshores marked by the code 869, meaning unrecognized territories, make profit on Kazakhmys contracts. Trade union leader Valery Chaika confirms that large multinational corporations have no issues with extracting money from the company at the expense of downsizing production and cutting salaries of workers. Transnational companies have legal, financial, and accounting departments, which allow to legally extract money from the state using loopholes in legislation of given countries. It does not mean they are stacking money in bags and smuggling them across the border. There is nothing to be surprised about. Entrepreneurs must seek profit. The less they pay in taxes and salaries, the more profit they make.
Aldiyar Saparov, the sole survivor of the Special Open Kulsari, was discharged from hospital and the chief doctor was dismissed, announced the Atarau hospital on Tuesday. It is unknown whether the suspected terrorist was arrested, although it was earlier reported that the court issued an arrest warrant expiring in 2 months.
Aldyar Saparov was in the apartment stormed by special forces on September 12th in Kulsari. 5 of the alleged criminals were killed during the operation, with investigators claiming all of them were linked to the September 5th blast in Atarao. It should be noted that doctors refused to name the date when Saparov was discharged. Neither do they speak of the reasons for the chief doctor's dismissal. They only say that the Department of Health forbids them to communicate with the media. Earlier, deputy to the chief doctor and now acting chief doctor Maraj Julkobayoli said that the victim will take a long time to recover. Saparov has been discharged a long time ago. He had been here for only about 10 days.
Meanwhile, religious scholars are debating the subject of radical movements and their popularity amongst the youth in the west of the country. Director of Atarao Regional Department of Religious Affairs, Orazbek Kasimov, assumes it stems from illiteracy, saying that schools should not limit themselves to teaching only history of religion.
Next time, we must completely revise the format of the religious awareness classes. Of course, since we're in the region, our requests rarely reach the people at the top. Such suggestions have been made before, and these things can be done by senior officials. It wouldn't be bad to teach children the Hanafi mazhab. Non-traditional movements are typically joined by young people in their early 20s. The official believes that to avoid this, the immunity against radical religious movements should be developed from early childhood. The only way to achieve this is to improve religious literacy and teach kids Hanafi mazhab. According to the head of the department, over 60% of Muslims in Atarao region do not follow traditional Islam, while there are many followers of Salafi movements. If their number exceeds half of the total number of Muslims, this can later lead to the religious tension, says Kasimov.
The photos of suspects of the case of mass murder in Ilala Town National Park emerged in mass media on Wednesday. The photos were distributed by the Department of Internal Affairs on Tuesday around police stations. Based on them, the police is searching for a resident of West Kazakhstan region Sayan Khairov and resident of Zhambyl region Zaurbek Batabayev. It is also noted that the criminals are members of radical Islamic movement and might be armed and possibly are preparing terrorist acts against law enforcement.
So far, the only suspect arrested in relation to the Ilyalatau massacre is the local gamekeeper Alexei Shkilov. His lawyer Yermurat Mukanov explains that people wanted by the police are indirectly related to the defendant. Currently, Shkilov is held in the temporary detention center of Karasai Police Department, charged with illegal firearms possession and waiting for the new expert review. The lawyer, however, does not understand how it will be relevant to the investigation and questions the link between the wanted individuals and the Ilyalatau park incidents. According to the information I have, it is too early to accuse them of these killings, but it seems that the investigation authorities have more data. Frankly speaking, it is a mystery to me. How did they manage to solve this crime? It appears that pre-trial investigators did just that by launching the search for these guys. There is also some progress in another high-profile case. It was revealed on Wednesday that the families of soldiers killed at Arkankirgen border outpost whose bodies were left unidentified were summoned to Astana. The prosecutor's office of the armed forces said it will announce the results of the genome expert review on the body remains recovered at the location. So far, only 11 bodies had been identified out of the 14 scorched remains found, thus rendering Denisrey Mirkhanimenov and contract soldier Rustem Akalbayev still missing. The 3 remaining unidentified bodies were sent to Germany for examination back on June 24th. The process lasted for 4 months, and the General Prosecutor's Office explained it by the severely burned state of the bodies.
MP Azat Piruashev appealed to the customs officials to intervene into the situation on the border with Kyrgyzstan, Kordai checkpoint in particular. The leader of Akjol party was outraged by the behavior of customs officers at the checkpoint in Zhambyl region.
The Kordai border station witnessed 11 new heads in the past year alone, with the last one appointed in early September. Despite the constant staff reshuffling, the situation remains the same, says Birushev. His party was approached by the victims of ill-managed crossing, which offers no proper conditions. People claim there is always a jam at the entrance and passport control zone, and the customs officers act in a disrespectful way to the others. The obligatory humiliation at Kordai can be avoided for a $3.5 intermediary fee and an easy passage across the border. There is no information on how many people use this service, but the statistics of the station says it can process 25,000 people and 4,000 vehicles daily. It takes only about 3 minutes to enter Kazakhstan from Kyrgyzstan, whereas the reverse trip can last for well over 2 hours, says the MP. It is always overcrowded and reeking in the passport control area. Someone is crying, shouting, and swearing. Those are now integral components of the customs station. There is every reason to believe that the real goal behind the total control and mass humiliation is not securing the customs regime, but banal extortion.
The fears of Kazakh residents that the membership in the customs union will bring negative consequences for ordinary citizens were confirmed by the MPs on Wednesday. Using the example of local car-producing industry, MP Murat Abenov is worried by the difference in taxes, which emerged after Russia entered WTO.
Russia joined WTO shortly after entering the customs union, and their customs duties decreased by half, while remaining the same in our country. It turns out that after the joint agreements we signed, we cannot turn the situation for the benefit of our people. Is it possible that we will face similar problems? Answering the MP's question, Janar Aydjanova, the Minister of Economic Integration, assured that there won't be a noticeable difference in prices for car industry products. She noted that according to WTO regulations, Russia had to adopt an utilization fee along with decreased duties, which will level out the difference in payments to a certain extent. Besides, Kazakhstan and Belarus took a compromised decision to retain existing customs duties before joining WTO. Janar Aydjanova notes that some of the local car manufacturers asked for the same thing. The vague explanations, however, didn't satisfy the MP, who doubts that the adopted agreements will protect Kazakh market. Abenov made this assumption based on the statistics of the increased import of Russian car products compared to the decreased export of local industrial goods.
New Prime Minister Serik Akhmetov is continuing to assemble the cabinet. On Wednesday, new head of the Labor and Social Protection Ministry was appointed. It is 35-year-old Serik Abdenov, who for 3 years worked as the deputy governor of East Kazakhstan region. Abdenov replaced Gulshara Abdikalikova at this position.
Abdenov has already made his first statement after assuming his new position. The minister does not see the need in elevating the pension age, the idea promoted by the head of the country's central bank, Grigory Marchenko. Abdenov's predecessor, Gulshara Abdikalikova, became president's advisor for the second time in her career. She will also be remembered as minister who completely ignored the strike of oil workers that led to a violent unrest. The ex-governor of Mangistau region, Krymbek Kusherbayev, who resigned from his post of the president's advisors following Zhanaozen tragedy, was recently appointed the fourth deputy prime minister. Thus, the only mystery now surrounds the future of Yerzhan Kazakhanov, as the chair of the foreign minister remains vacant for now.
Scandal erupted at the last Congress of Kazakh Writers' Union. Writer Alpamys Bekturganov criticized his colleagues and the chairman of the union, Nurlan Arazalin, when he was given the floor. More details in the next report.
Еще меня переживут, и всех переживут. Абай будет жить вечно. Союз писателей не было, он членом не был.
The dissident writer Alpamys Bekturganov, already in a relaxed atmosphere, tells reporters about what made him go on stage and perform at the 14th Congress of the Writers' Union, although he has long been excluded from the organization and nobody gave him the word. We need to wake our clergy up. They keep their heads in sand while they breathe with their tails. Open your eyes. We're not the singers, we're the creators, and the people are looking at us, waiting for us to act and to be the wise elderly, but instead they all sit tight. 2 days ago, the real Kazakh drama occurred at Abay Theatre, re-election of the chairman for the Writers' Union, when the current chair decided to run for his position once again. The playwright Nurlan Arazalin has been in this position for already 16 years, and this will be his 4th term in a row. The only person who spoke against the permanent chairmanship was the dissident Alpamys Bekturganov. Nurlan Arazalin called down and wrapped the speech of his fellow writer Bekturganov. The chairman of the Writers' Union has got the same response to all who criticize his activities. They started criticizing me even before I mentioned the possible resignation. They said all sorts of bad things about me. I'll leave those extra remarks on the conscience of those people. The former Minister of Culture, now Secretary of State Mukhtar Kul-Muhammad, who was watching Bekturganov from the first rows, only made a face. Later he handed out the honorary certificate to the distinguished writers. Alpamys Bekturganov has his own idea of what is so distinguishing about his fellow writers. The Writers' Union organization these days is nothing but a bunch of adulators. They hope to receive something from the governor and from the president if they say something appropriate, because the chairman of the union rewards them for saying the right things. Nowadays you can become a state award winner undeservedly by paying for it. The Alash Award, which sounds very prestigious, is given away in numbers. There were 42 award winners already, even prior to the Congress. How is it possible? Yet the famous poet Mukhtar Shakhanov was among those who voted against Nurlan Arazalinov, who has been in chair of the organization for 16 years. Shakhanov says that Arazalin didn't accomplish much during his years. How much longer is he going to remain, asks the Kazakh writer. Yet Shakhanov is mainly concerned about the quality of the Kazakh clergy. He repeatedly appealed to the cultural workers with suggestions to unite. His recent appeal from the September 13th hasn't been supported much, considering that there are 777 members of the Writers' Union. There have been many of ruthless people lately, and if all of these writers would have supported us on the issue of language, nation, states and other spiritual matters, the authorities would have taken us differently then. The writer Alpamuz Bekturganov, who once managed to oppose the governor of West Kazakhstan region, Ismukhambetov, landed in jail in 2009 and was expelled from the Writers' Union the same year. Once released, Bekturganov continues to denouncing the Kazakh clergy. According to Alpamuz Bekturganov, the cultural workers are all pro-Nazarbayev these days. Instead of being a mediator between the government and people, almost all of the country's clergy is busy praising the president and his entourage, while the tragic events similar to Zhanaozen are being suppressed, says the writer. In last December of 2011, Alpamuz Bekturganov himself participated in the rally against the execution of oil workers in Uralsk. This is the tragedy, the national tragedy. One day it will become a day of mourning in the history. We were supposed to honor the victims, the innocent oil workers, with a moment of silence at the opening of the Congress of the Writers' Union. However, this wasn't even mentioned. Yet another Congress went well for Nurlan Arazalinov despite Bekturganov's criticism from the stage. He was re-elected the chairman of the Writers' Union by the majority of votes.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Stay well.